Okay, we're starting the first year of Siman Shinayim Beis. I split the shir into two. The first part is discussing when you could make an Erev Chatzeres, when it's needed, when it's not needed. The second part, it's referring to when, the second part we'll talk about from Sif Yud Aleph and on, is when you have a wall in between two Reshuyos, how to be mevatel, to create a Pesach, whatever it is, the second half of the Siman, I'm going to talk about in the next year. We'll talk about until that point, I'm going to talk about today. So, we know how to make Erev Chatzeres, you know which Reshuyos need an Erev Chatzeres. Comes Siman Shinayim Beis to tell you when do you need an Erev Chatzeres? Which kinds of Reshuyos need an Erev Chatzeres? So the first rule that is relevant is when we're talking about carrying from a Reshus HaYochid that Tashmishoy Todir, that it's used on a regular basis, to another Reshus HaYochid, which is also Tashmishoy Todir, which is also used on a regular basis as for people, then there is no Reshus HaRabim between them. That's when you need a Erev Chatzeres. Now, Midei Raisa, carrying from Reshus HaYochid to Reshus HaYochid without the hefsek of Reshus HaRabim is not aser. There's Takanas HaChamim, you have to carry. People should not get mixed up by carrying from a Reshus HaYochid to a place which is aser, it's on Reshus, that carrying from a Reshus, which is Tashmishoy Todir, to another Reshus, which is Tashmishoy Todir, to Reshus HaYochid, you have to make Erev Chatzeres between them. But if you have two Reshus HaYochids, which are not Tashmishoy Todir, neither of them, then the Chachamim did not make such a gzeira. What's the examples that are given? First of all is you have two roofs. You have one house which has a roof, and you have another house which also has a roof, and then you go from one roof to the other roof. Then you don't need a Erev Chatzeres. Same thing is two Chatzeres which are samuch one to another, or two karf or a karfef, or a combination from a chotzer to a karfef, from a karfef to a chotzer, from a gag to a karfef, etc. All these which are not Tashmishoy Todir, you don't have to have a Erev Chatzeres between them. For what things does it apply? It only applies for kelim which were in that non-Tadir Reshus when Shabbos started. There were shoyves in that Reshus. And that is even if the one Chatzar belongs to one person and the other Chatzar belongs to somebody else. And that means the Be'etzim, there is two different Reshuyos. But when we're looking at it from the perspective of Ein Tashmisham Tadir, all these Reshus HaYochids, which are not Tashmisham Tadir, they all become considered like one Reshus HaYochid for the purpose of carrying. For what? For the Kalim which were Shoyves in those Reshuyos. That means, let's look at it from the perspective of the Keli. The Keli that was Shoyves in this Chatzir, for this Keli, all the Reshuyos are one. All the Reshus HaYochids, which are not houses, which are not Tashmisham Tadir, are all considered one. So technically, if there will be something which is in one, if you have an example, if there's no Erev Chatzeres, and you left in your Chatzir, obviously we're talking about Chatzeres and Karfifos and everything else that are properly closed, they don't have the issue of being a different Reshus, open to another Reshus, all the things we discussed in previous Simanim. But if you have a stroller without a baby inside, which is left in a Chatzir, when Shabbos started, or something else which was left in that Chatzir, that technically could move from Chatzir to Chatzir to Chatzir to Chatzir across the whole city, as long as all the Chatzeres are connected, or from roof to roof, without a problem. You're not over any Isser, not even Midrabanan. But you cannot carry it from these Reshuyos into the houses. That means something which was shoyves in this karfif or in this chatzir, and now you want to bring it into the house, that you can't. That's already also. It means this, that you can't carry that you could carry from a chatzar to a chatzar or within a chatzar, which ain't tashmishay tadir, only applies to something which was shoivus in the chatzar and stayed in the chatzar. If you want to bring it into the house, it's asur. Why? Because the house, relative to the chatzar, is considered a reshus mechulekas. When you look at it, the fact that all the reshus together are considered one reshus and not mechulok, it's only when they're all the same equal standard, all reshus yachids, which ain't tashmish and tadir. When you're moving from one reshus yachid, which is tashmishay, ain't tashmishay tadir, to another reshus yachid, which tashmishay is tadir, you have a problem, and you do have to have a erev chatzeris, and the same would apply to something which is shavus in the house, and you want to bring it out to this chatzar. In this category of places which are not considered, which are considered ein tashmisham tadir, aside for the chatzeris and kafifos and everything else, same thing also applies to a mavoi, which has a lechi and a kaira. It's also considered the same as a chatzar. Now, a shul, a Beis HaKnesses, is also considered like a chatzar for this. There is a machlokes how to define a shul for this purpose, but if you look in Siman Shin Samach Vav, which you already learned before in Seif Vav and the Alter Rebbe, it says you're allowed to carry mutam metalta Beis HaKnesses, and it says over there umimenu lechatzar Beis HaKnesses elim ken yesh bo shtei diras. When there's no erev chatzeris, you carry within the shul, and from the shul to the chatzar of the shul. And if there's only one dira, it's still not poisel. In the Lashon Alter Rebbe is mutarim gam ken letalta mechatzar the Beis HaKnesses, from the chatzar to the shul or the dira zu. So all these, the Beis HaKnesses and the chatzar around it, all seem like they're all considered in the same category of ein tashmishtum tadir. Which means, again, if you look at all these reshuyas, in addition to gagras and karfifos and chatzeres and mavim, mesukah, belechi, v'kaira, you also have a shul and the chatzar of a shul. They're all part of the same definition of it. They're not allowed to, because then the chatzar belongs to the two houses.
So what?
Huh?
So what? You can't show the chatzar, you still carry there.
No, but you can't carry from the shul into that chatzar. Because the chatzar becomes a separate. You can't carry from there into the houses. If it's a shavus in the house, you can't carry into there.
Like everything.
Like
everything.
Right, but from the shul to the chatzar, or from the shul to that dira, you have no problem to carry from one to another. You're allowed to carry from the shul to the dira.
The dira is in the chatzar of the shul? The dira is in the chatzar of the shul?
Yeah, in the chatzar of the shul.
So in the shul, the category of these things that tashmisha is not tadir.
Yeah.
So you can carry anything that's in the shul, you can carry to the chatzar regardless.
Yeah, from the chatzar into the house is a shayla.
If there was one house, you can carry from
If there was one house, you could, yeah. Because it all becomes as part of it, part of that house. Rather than being independent. But a Beis HaKnesses l'chayra is its own, is also considered a reshus, a tadir. Now, another place which you could look at it as a place which is ein tadir is a lobby of a building. Or a stairwell of a building. That, if you look in the beginning of Siman Shin Ayin, where it talks about someone who lives in the Beis Shar, over there it says that that the Beis Shar ein olav teras bayis la teras chatzar, and therefore, if it's a teras chatzar, then again that means something which is within. If there is no erev chatzeres in the building and there's something inside. In the lobby, you could carry within something which is shavus in the lobby. You could carry within the lobby. You carry from the lobby to the backyard and back, but not into the house or back into or from the house into it.
If the chatzar is open on the chatzar, the back chatzar is open to two houses, would then be usher to carry?
Within the chatzar, no, the chatzar is not a problem. Carry to the next chatzar also, huh?
No. If you have a house open on the chatzar, and that chatzar is open on the chatzar, it's open to two houses.
But the chatzar is not tashmish tadir. All the chatzeres are considered one.
No, but could you carry from that house?
You can't carry from the house. No, can't carry from the house. Huh?
If
You would carry to your own chatzar. You can't carry weiter.
What could you carry to your gag if your gag is open, their gag is open
Yeah.
to two houses?
Yeah. To your own chatzar you could carry as long as it's you can carry into your own chatzar. If it depends what's considered open. So if it has no marking whatsoever where your chatzar ends, you have a different problem. You don't have a definition of where your chatzar is. With the carry to your own chatzar, you don't need the erev chatzar is between your own house and your own chatzar that belongs to the same person. So now, if you have something which is shoivus in your house, you could take it out to your own chatzar, but you can't take it out from that chatzar to a different chatzar. And even if you took it out from your house to your chatzar, and from your chatzar to the next chatzar, you did it beheter. For example, you were wearing something. You were wearing a coat, and you were wearing a coat, and you went from one chatzar, from your house to the chatzar, and from the chatzar to another chatzar. You can't take it off and carry it weiter. Why? Because a keli which was shoivus in the house, Alter Rebbe explains, if a keli was shoivus in the house, the lashon Alter Rebbe is b'chol mokim sheheim dinam kiloheim babayis. Doesn't make a difference how many steps away you are. Being that it originally was shoivus in the chatzar, it can't go weiter. You cannot carry it further to the next location. And the same thing you can't carry from the chatzar you can't carry from a chatzar to another to a house through a chatzar which does not have erev. It means in essence, the first thing to know is where were the kelim were shoivus. Once you know where the kelim were shoivus, then you know if they could be moved to another place which ain't tashmishtoi tadir. Now, what happens if you went and you did take it out from a house to a chatzar, from a house to your chatzar, and from your chatzar to another place which is not me'orav? You could carry it more than dalad amas. Once you already did the isur, so to speak, you moved it to the other chatzar, then you don't have an isur to carry it further within that chatzar. There is a machlokes achreinu how to do it, but Alter Rebbe in Shin Pei Ches, the end of Sif Aleph and Shin Pei Ches tells you once you moved it into that chatzar, even though you did it by isur, because it was shoivus in the house, within that chatzar you could still carry it. Now, if you have a karfif which was not hukaf ladira, and even if it's less than the base asayim, you're not allowed to carry from the house into this karfif, even if you go through a chatzar, which is allowed to, even if the karfif belongs to you. But if it's within the karfif, this is all things that we learned before. If it's within the karfif, if it's less than base asayim, it's not a problem. You're allowed to carry in this karfif whatever was shoivus in this karfif. If it's a karfif shaloi hukaf ladira, but it's mukaf. If it's not mukaf, you have a problem. It's a karmelis. And you could carry from this karfif which is nolei hukaf ladira, to another chatzar, which is also in tashmishay tadir, and from the chatzar you could carry into the karfif, which is also not tashmishay tadir, as long as it's something which was shoivus in either the karfif or the chatzar. Now, if you carried from a karfif into a chatzar, karfif shaloi hukaf ladira, you carried it into a chatzar, and now you want to move it from the chatzar into the house, it's asur. Yeah, because it was shoivus, it started in the karfif. That's where kono shvisa in the karfif. And they move it from the karfif to the chatzar, from the chatzar to the house, is asur. Now, if it's something which was kono shvisa in the house, it was shoivus in the house, now you want to take it out to the karfif. You're not allowed to. Right? You take it out from the house to the chatzar, and from the chatzar to the karfif, you're not allowed to do it. But now, what happens if it's in the chatzar? Your own chatzar. It was shoivus in the chatzar, and you want to bring it. Now, you're allowed to bring it something which is shoivus in your own chatzar, and your chatzar's personal chatzar, to bring from your own chatzar to your own house is not a problem to bring in. Same thing you're allowed to bring from your house to your chatzar on Shabbos. But if you have a karfif which also belongs to you, and now what you want to do is you carried it from the chatzar, you carried it to the house. Or from the chatzar, you carry it to the karfif, which both of them are mutter. And now you want to carry it from one of these locations to the other one, which means it was shoivus in the chatzar. You want to bring it to the karfif, is mutter. But if you first brought it into the house and then you want to bring it into the karfif, you have a problem. Because the carry from the house to the karfif straight is a problem. Just like the carry from the karfif straight to the house is also a problem. The only place it's mutter is the carry from the chatzar. So therefore, if you look in Shinun Ches and Sif Dalad over there, the Alter Rebbe explains to you, being that it was shoivus in the chatzar, so the place where it's kind of shvis is in the chatzar. I want to bring it into the karfif, but without realizing or intentionally, I brought it into the house. Now I want to bring it into the karfif. I have to take it from the house, bring it back to the chatzar. Leave it in the chatzar. Now, because that's where it was shoivus. Once it's in the chatzar, I can take it out from the chatzar and bring it to the karfif. That's the only time I could do it, because if you have the chatzar, which is a place from which you're allowed to carry to the house, and you're allowed to carry to the karfif, but you can't carry from the karfif to the house, then if I brought it to the karfif and I want to bring it to the house, or I brought it to the house and I want to bring it into the karfif, I could bring it back to the place where it was shoivus, which is a chatzar, and from there I could bring it to the next location. Put it down and then take it and then move it further. Now, when it comes to carrying in a park, you have a park. Park's in the city. Now, a park could be considered a karfif. Adam l'knisa v'yitzia tamid. And this gather of knisa v'yitzia tamid is also explained in Shin Samach Beis in the beginning. That is the gather of ladur, of living in a place. Hukaf ladira is the entry and exit on a regular basis, right? As opposed to a hekef, which is only done by a karfif lishman, masha b'toichan, etc. Rather, what's the purpose of this hekef, this park? It's ladira, to go in and go out, and the lashon is like in Shinun Ches, in Sif Yud Zayin, listoifiv b'tzeil ha'ilanis, to hang out by the shade of the trees. It's not the place which is Zorua. A lot of the parks, the purpose of them is to be able to walk between the trees and have a nice, enjoyable afternoon. But if it's a park which is planted with flowers, Zorua, and the people who planted the flowers are not interested in you walking on the flowers, fakert, they actually block you from going into the flowers. So if there's a gate around the flowers, you're good, because you separated the karfif. If you don't have a gate around all the places which is Zorua, you have a problem. So, but it makes a park could be considered hukaf l'dira if it's closed off, or it could be considered not hukaf l'dira, depends on the situation. Why? Because if it's planted with flowers, a zroim, which the purpose of zroim is nobody goes and hangs out by the zroim, also by flowers, you only hang out by looking at them from far, not walking around between them. To do what? And there's what? And there's paths between it? But it's all closed off with one gate? So what do you want to do? But the park itself is closed off.
No, the question is that place of the whole park that makes it like that.
If in the middle you have a whole base of Simon that's planted with flowers, the chayr is place of the whole park, yeah.
Even if they're separate, there's like half a cell here, half a cell there, half a cell.
Yeah. But it's all within the same hekef. They don't have to be, there's no din of love when it comes to Zeraim. If I have a hekef of Beis Osayim, and I planted the Rubai, Zerua, it's all in Shin and Ches. And just to point out, since we're already discussing Karfif, that although there are shittas which hold that inside a city, the whole concept of Karfif doesn't apply, and it's not nifsel by Zeraim. One of the people that is actually the Sharei Deya, which is in the back of your white book, and that's that he says that Zeraim inside a city are not poisel. And you have even more so that if the whole city is mukaf and inside of it you have a karf of the Imre Yosher, Chelik Beis Siman Samach holds that it's not a problem. But I already showed to you, first of all, from the Rebbe's letters that a Zeraim are mevatful inside a city, the letter to Manhattan, and Al Rebbe Bichlal deletes those words mechutz la'ir about karfaf. All the people that do it, they prove it on Rashi. That Rashi, when he says karfaf, he says lishman mechutz la'ir. Al Rebbe, when he quotes the Rashi, he takes off the words mechutz la'ir in all the three places where he quotes it. Good. So therefore, let's go back to the park. So if you have a park that is a karfaf that was hukaf l'dira, big enough, and there were kelim which were shoivis inside the park before Shabbos. L'mashal, if you have any kind of things inside a park, even if the park itself does not, so you could carry within things that were shavas in the park, you could carry within the park. Not only that, if you have a park that's connected to your backyard was also, you could carry something which is shavas in your backyard to the park, or from the park to your backyard. The only question I have, and I ask some people here in Kailo, and I don't have an answer for it yet, is if I have a baby stroller which was left in my backyard from Erev Shabbos, so it was a keli l'shavus in a place which is ein tashmishay tadir. Could I put a baby in it and carry the baby from the park, from my chatzah to the next chatzah? Because the keli that I'm pushing is that. The question is if the baby is considered carrying or not. So maybe you could push the baby till the border, take the baby out of the stroller, let him cross the border, and then push the stroller weiter, maybe. Because the stroller is a keli. The stroller was within a shavus in the chatzah, and is moving from one chatzah to another chatzah. Yeah, so this is the beginning of the siman. When do you have to do a Eruv? When? In which places you have to do Eruv Chatzeres, which places you don't have to. In Seif Hey, the Alter Rebbe goes into discussion that's pretty much parallel to the Shulchan Aruch. It's off by one or two Seifim, but something which is in Seif Hey and Alter Rebbe is like Seif Gimel in the Shulchan Aruch, and it's pretty close to be able to find where you are. Seif Hey, when you want to make an Eruv Chatzeres between two houses, between two Chatzeres, you have to make sure that there is an opening which is 4 tfachim wide, or a window which is 4 by 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, and the window has to be within 10 tfachim from the ground, and then you could carry between them, regardless of, after you make Eruv Chatzeres, you could carry between these two reshuyas, not only through this opening, but through any kind of opening that you have between. But you have to have at least one opening, which is dalad al dalad between them, which is below the 10 tfachim, which is below the 10 tfachim mark. The reason is because if you have a chaloin which is above 10 tfachim from the floor, then the bottom 10 tfachim are considered the mechitza, which separates the two reshuyas. And we're going to see later that when you have a wall between the two, that's 10, you cannot make Eruv Chatzeres if there is no access between the two that's below 10 tfachim. What are we talking about over here? This wall, we're talking about a wall between two chatzeres, not a chaloim between two houses, which is going to be discussed later. Now, if the window is round, you have to make sure that you have a square of dalad tfachim, dalad within the circle, and when you measure the 10 tfachim from the ground, you don't measure to the bottom of the circle, you have to measure to where the square within the circle begins. We don't look at what's outside the circle. So you put the square of dalad inside the circle, and from there you measure, from that point is where you measure the 10 tfachim to the ground. If you have less than 10, you are fine. Now, but what happens if you have a window between two houses? So you have two houses that are connected to each other, and there's a window between them, and the window is more than 10 tfachim from the floor. The windows are usually higher than 10 tfachim from the floor. Most windows in most houses are good 15 or 20 tfachim from the floor. At least it depends where, but a lot of times they start within 15 tfachim from the floor. Then it depends. If both of them are covered with a roof, it means it's house and a house. We look as if both of them, as if the gap between the floor and the window is filled, it's male, and therefore we don't care if it's less than, if it's more than 10 tfachim. The lashon Alter Rebbe is the fisha bayis kevon shehu mekura, being that the house has a roof, harehu kemale. It is like as if it is completely filled. What the reason for it is? What's this whole harehu kemale coming from? It's based on Rashba and Rabbeinu Yochanan. If you look in the Al Yarabah, which is in your brown books, it's printed together with a lavush. And you look over there in the back. You have the Nusach of Shulchan Aruch, and you have the Levush and the Eliyah Rabbah. And you look in the Eliyah Rabbah and Sif Beis on Sif Cotton Beis. And over there he brings the Rabbeinu Yohanan and the Rashba, that being that the house has kalim all over the house, so it's mevatel. It's as if the whole house is filled with kalim, and it's easy to move from one to another. The Rashba even mentions benches. It's nichot hashmishte. It also becomes nichot hashmishte. So therefore, it's not a problem to go from one to another. If you look at the Minchas Pitim on this seif in the Shulchan Aruch, the Minchas Pitim is in the Yalkut Mefarshim in the back of the brown book. It's in page Kuf Yud. He brings the Levush, which brings this lashon. He mentions that the Alter Rebbe also uses this lashon, that kevon shehu mekure harehu kemale. And he says that the Eliyah Rabbah quotes the Rabbeinu Yohanan that the reason is because of big kalim. And the Minchas Pitim says, Tzarich Iyun, this thing doesn't make any sense. Doesn't understand why having all these big kalim will have any real effect on this window. Why should it have any effect in it? Why? Because he says, according to that, if you would have a chaloin in a place between a house and between a house and an aliyah, and over there's no kalim anywhere around it, according to the Rabbeinu Yohanan, it shouldn't work. But we know, and it's written in halacha, that it does work. So therefore, he says we must say that the reason is not because of kalim. Rather, the reason is because anything which has a roof on it, once it has a roof on it, we consider that anything below 10 tefachim is like as if it's filled up. So it's not about being in a house; it's rather about something which is covered with a roof, with a roof on top of it. And Minchas Pitim continues. He brings the Goyin Yaakov. The Goyin Yaakov of Maseches Eruvin has a shaila, has a suffix. If you have a Reshus HaYachid, if you have a chotzer, which the chotzer has a roof on top of it, do we also two chatzeres? Let's say two chatzeres, and between them there's a wall, and the wall is more than 10 tefachim, but it has a chaloin. But since both chatzeres are covered with roofs, do we also say that being that it's mekure, you could make an erev chatzeres through this window? Or do we say that it only applies in houses? When do we say the harehu kemole, if it's any kind of mekure, or only if it's within the house? And the nafkamina would be, do we look at it because it's a house? Do we look at it because of the kirui? If you look at it because of mekure, a chatzer should also work. If you look at it because of a house, then by a chatzer it wouldn't work. But at the same time, if it's in a house and the house punkt does not have a roof in that section, if it's an open porch, then it should work. But if you look from the Lashon Alter Rebbe clearly mentions that the Lashon of Kevon Shehu Mekure Harehu Kemole, that basically it boils down to the Mekure, to the roof, and being that it's a roof. So according to that, L'cha'ira, if you had a Chatzer that's Mekure, two Chatzeres are Mekure, you could, and there is a Chaloin, which is above 10 tefachim from the ground. Between the two, you would be able to make an erev chatzeres between one and the other one. Now, the same lashon, exactly the same lashon that the Alter Rebbe uses, is also in the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Katan Lamed Daled. And there is a Chazon Ish, Siman Tzadik Vav Sif Katan Chaf, that he takes the lashon of the Mishnah Berurah and he says it's clear that the Mishnah Berurah understood that by a chatzer mekure you could still do it because it goes based on the kirui. Even the Chazon Ish himself disagrees with that. He says Mishnah Berurah understood it this way, and he disagrees with it. Now, if we're looking at it, the simple lashon of Mishnah Berurah is a simple copy and paste from the Alter Rebbe. You look at the simple lashon of the Alter Rebbe, and that is what comes out as common between them. Nafkamina would be, sometimes you have two houses next to each other, especially in cities like New York where all the houses a lot of them are attached to each other, and you have, each house has in front of it a before in front of the house, a lot of them have like these porches kind of things. You go up the steps and you have like a platform, and you have two next to each other, and between them they might have a wall which is 10 tfachim. So you can't carry from one to another, unless you go through the whole sulam and everything else, which goes to the second half of the siman. But if both of them are mekudah, l'chayra, if there'll be some kind of opening between them, will make it much easier. If there'll be some kind of chalim between them, will make it much easier to carry between the two. You'll be able to make eruv chatzeres. Otherwise, you have a problem. Unless you have a connection in the back, you're not able to carry between the two. In Sivches is where it starts, and the Alter Rebbe says that if you have a wall which is 10 tfachim high across the whole chatzer between two chatzeres, it's 10 tfachim high, you cannot make an eruv chatzeres between them. The reasons for it is because it separates the two reshuyos. It's not nichot hashmishti to carry from one to another, and then it goes into a whole discussion how to solve it. If you look in Seif Yud Aleph is where it starts. This I'm going to be discussing in the next year. He starts from Seif Yud Aleph about the ladders, that you put a ladder on one side and a ladder on the other side, how wide the ladders should be, and how tall the ladder should be, and if you could make a opening. There's basically two ways to solve the problem of a wall between the two. Three ways. One is to eliminate the wall. Number two is to eliminate the height of the wall. And number three is to make an opening between them. And each one of the solutions which are given, whether it's the ladders, whether it's adding something on each side, will fall into one of these categories, whether it is creating a Pesach or it is eliminating the height of the wall. And that Mitzvah Hashem will be the next year, either on Wednesday or on Thursday, and that will finish Shin Ayin Beis.